The topic of his speech is different types and styles of speech. Over to you, DTM.
Thank you so much, Toastmaster Rusa. So different types and styles of speech. Lately, this has been one of the most prominent questions that I've been facing, and I'm sure.
Sorry, I'm stopping you. Who's timing you?
Actually, I've turned on the timer myself, so
right,
no worries. Yeah, no worries at all. So lately, I've been facing this question, and I'm sure everyone who's mentoring someone has faced this question at some point in time. That, you know, how should I speak? What kind of speech should I give? And this becomes even more important when it's contest season, as it is now, because in the contest, everybody wants to win, and they're just looking for things that will score well with the judges. Uh, and then they're also looking at championship speeches. So, on a lighter note, somebody said, and I quote, about international speech contests, especially at Toastmasters final stages. You have to have 3 Ds in your speech if you want to have a good chance: death, disease, or divorce. So if one of these elements are in your speech, you have a very good chance. But the problem is that now everybody is doing it. So again, you have to set yourself apart. The truth is that there is no magic bullet. There's not one answer. Every contest is different. Every club audience is different. Every stage is different. And there's a different portfolio where so there's a different portfolio of thoughts and criteria in every judging panel. And there's absolutely no way to predict what they would fall for. So today, I will try to answer some of those questions, that what kind of speech suits what kind of occasion. And but the short answer is that, you know, you have to be several people. You have to be several kinds of speaker if you really want to be a good speaker. You cannot stick to one type of speech. That's one thing I've learned. You have to suit the style of speaking to the content. There's also another very big question, and that is whether to stand and deliver like we prefer doing in speeches, or whether to just sit like this and you know, just give a talk. So yeah, so first of all, I will cover the types of speech. And trust, let me give one caveat. This is just my experience. There is no such guide on the internet. There's no standard documentation in Toastmasters where you will find that, you know, these are the types of speeches. So yeah, you can Google it and you'll find a lot of material, but this is purely my experience. And my experience comes from speaking in this club, in other clubs, and in international clubs, seeing the international contests, judging the international contests. So first of all, the tone. And several times when people have asked me for feedback, often I find myself giving them one advice, that make it more formal, make it more like a speech. It should not be a talk. So that's what I find myself the most saying to people, because a speech is more formal. It has a beginning, a middle, and end. It has more dramatics, and sometimes those dramatics may not seem right to you. You would feel that, you know, you're doing something artificial. But the answer to that is fake it till you make it. So yes, it will appear fake. When you try something new in a speech, it will appear fake and artificial because it's not the part of your standard arsenal of techniques. But you have to develop it. You have to grow into it until it feels absolutely natural. So there are speakers that you've seen who are very dramatic, but they appear perfectly natural. And then there are speakers like me who, whenever they go for dramatics, people feel that it's very much contrived and faked. So don't be bothered by it. That's the first thing. Don't be bothered by it. Don't hesitate just because you think that you'll appear artificial. Because if you keep hesitating, you'll never master the technique. Then there's the third kind of speech. So we've covered the dramatic speech and the formal speech. The formal speech is, of course, suited for formal occasions. When it's a research-based speech or when it's a tribute to someone at a formal occasion. And we are not just talking about Toastmasters meeting here, okay? We're talking about real life. So of course, you will be hard pressed to give a Toastmaster style speech, for example, in your office. If there's a farewell party and you have to speak in someone's honor, of course, that speech, or worse, if uh, if it's a obituary or a funeral and you need to uh, give a eulogy for the person, of course, it cannot contain humor, it cannot contain uh, too much movement, because then it will not suit the occasion. Uh, so the hybrid style fits most of the occasions where most of the speech is formal and structured, but there are a few jokes, a few bits of audience interaction in between. So I find that that's the closest hack. Uh, that's the most easy hack. You can tick all the boxes on a contest ballot by doing a hybrid style speech. So you need to consciously work towards it. That you should look at the contest ballot and you should say, okay, this is where I introduce vocal variety. This is where I modulate my voice. This is where I move. And this is where I engage the audience. And this is where I try to make them laugh or smile. So you need to plan it. There's no shortcut to planning. And contest speeches in particular, no matter what stage they are, they go through months and months of trial and error. We ourselves have witnessed many international speakers who have visited our club just to practice their speech. And you've observed that they want feedback from everyone. Personally, I'm against taking feedback from everyone because that just confuses one. You should pick a few people and just take feedback from them. That's by no means to say that people's feedback is not good. That's just saying that our brain has the capacity to process only a few streams of feedback. If we try to please everyone, we'll end up with something that's tasteless and insipid. So I suggest to avoid doing that. Then there's a casual speech, and the casual speech is usually employed in table topics because table topics are very much structured around the table topics question. That what was the question that needs to be answered. So it can be formal, it can be casual, but you can get away with the casual style in impromptu speeches because you are not expected to plan it. In fact, it is even preferable in impromptu speeches that a casual style should be adopted. And then there's a talk, and the talk is actually something delivered in a conversational tone. It's not delivered in a speech tone. For example, if you take a sentence that was the worst moment of my life. So in a talk, you would come close to the camera and you'd say, that was the worst moment of my life. And in a formal speech, you would say, that was the worst moment of my life. So you recognize that style, right? So again, it's all about amplification. But the talk is usually something that is more intimate. It can be if you're telling your life story, if you're actually recounting something that really has a connection with the audience, you can afford to give a talk. The trouble is, though, that for some speakers, most of their speeches are talks. And that's something I feel that is not right. We should all be flexible enough to be able to cycle through all these styles according to the need of the speech. So moving forward, the types of speeches. Now, What I said earlier were the tones: dramatic, formal, hybrid, casual, and talk. And now the types of speeches. So first type is, of course, the story, which is the most popular type. And uh, it is the sure shot way to score well with the judges in a contest or score well in the voting with the audience. Everything could be a story. Even if you think that you cannot incorporate a story in anything, trust me, you can. Even in a research based project, if you can bring a story, and especially if that story has either death, disease, or divorce, oh, then you're off to the races. So, so yeah, then there's a motivational speech. And I believe that is the most dominant type of speech that new Toastmasters make, because they come into Toastmasters thinking that I don't know why everybody wants to become a motivational speaker. For the life of me, I don't know what a motivational speaker is, or what sets them apart versus mere mortals like us. But anyhow, that's what most people care about when they come into Toastmasters. They want to become motivational speakers. They have been inspired by motivational speakers. So for them, the public speaking sphere is limited to motivational speaking. So that's where the motivational speech comes from. It is a formal speech that has a lot of quotes. And again, I have a lifelong animosity with people using other people's quotes. And that is something extremely personal because there's nothing forbidden in Toastmasters about it. But I feel that if you need to use someone else's words, especially the worst part at the end of your speech, you're leaving the audience with someone else's words rather than yours. Why should someone else get the stage when you're on the stage? So, by all means, use a quote, maybe at the start or to inform the body of your speech. But I don't think it's advisable that you end the speech with a quote or center the whole idea of your speech around the quote because your life is yours. The person who said that quote, maybe they're 99% of the time they will be either Elon Musk or Steve Jobs or Jeff Bezos or Jack Ma or the other flavor of the month. And guess what? They live far different lives than yours. That one bit of their life that that quote represents, I mean, how can you say that's relevant to you or any of your audience? They've lived far different lives. Your story is unique, and your life is unique in the history of the universe. It will always be unique. So come up with your own words. Your words are more important than someone else's recycled quotes. And then there's the research kind of speech. So we've covered story, we've covered motivational, and then the research. So the research is, of course, when you're presenting a set of data, and it can be more serious, can be more formal, but my advice is to add a little bit of humor or drama to it because it can get boring if the research topic is not of the interest to the audience, and 99% of the time it will be, because it would, if it were of the interest to the audience, then no research would be required. Audience would already know about it, right? So chances are that if you're really interested in something, the rest of the audience may not be relating to it. So it is your job to make it digestible to them. And that's why you need to be a little bit dramatic. So for example, a research-based speech, you can start with a sweeping statement. For example, some controversial statement that grabs the audience's attention, and then that makes them curious about the topic of the speech. And then there's an emotional speech. An emotional speech is kind of a motivational speech, but usually it comes from your life. So you're recounting your life story. You're recounting some tough time that you had in your life. You're recounting the life story of a beloved person that you lost. So usually those are the emotional speeches. And one of the very good examples of emotional speech would be the speech by Toastmaster Jaya Jaggi in the district speech contest finale last year. So that is a very good example. And that in an emotional speech, you can afford to act out quite a bit. You can take the role of different characters in the story. You can laugh, you can cry, you can represent them. So they give you a whole lot of margin. Finally, standing versus sitting. So My short answer to that is, if you do plan to do more work with your face in the speech and your voice, then go ahead, sit and deliver. But if you want to use your whole body and you want to make a more formal speech where the voice should come from your chest and you could be more dramatic, then it's advisable to stand and deliver. So those are some of the tips that I've learned over the types of styles, types of speeches and styles of speeches. And finally, the age old question whether to stand or sit for a speech. In the end, it doesn't really matter. But if you plan to use your face and voice more, um, and you need to be closer to the camera or you need to operate slides, you can sit. But for all other types of speeches, maybe it will be good if you stand because your whole body will be used and your voice and demeanor will be different. Trust me on this. When you stand, it is in another world. So with that, my allotted time is over. In fact, it was over 40 seconds ago, but since no one else was timing, I took advantage.